Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, jambo, bonjour, kia ora. Hi, bienvenidos. My name is Chedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Man, the languages, we're adding to them all the time. We added French today because our guest is coming to us from Provence in France. Her name is Ashley Davidson Fisher, and she is the author of a beautiful children's book called Petite Josette in Provence. One of the reasons I use 8 different languages to say hello at the beginning of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is I want people to know that wherever they are listening to the show, we want to welcome them to the show. We want them to feel welcome. And I'm not great with languages, but I found over the years that doing something as simple as saying hello to somebody in their language oftentimes breaks down any barriers that may exist between people. You know, if you are the author of a great children's book, especially if you're an independent author of a great children's book, especially if you're the first time independent author of a great children's book, you may feel like there's a wall between you and the families that you think will enjoy your children's book. And there is. I mean, there are thousands of books that are published every single year, maybe every single month. Thousands of children's books that are out there, all scrambling for attention, all trying to get families to look at them and take notice of them. We've developed a program here at the Reading with Your Kids podcast called the Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read Program. We've assembled a team of evaluators, and if they feel that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read. And with that status and recognition comes a whole lot of promotional help. Check it out today. Please go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Joining us right now from Provence in the beautiful country of France. She is the author, and I know I'm gonna butcher this title, but my guest is really kind, and she's gonna give me the correct pronunciation. She's the author of a really, really breathtakingly beautiful picture book. It's called La Petite Josette en Provence. I'm sorry. Please welcome to the show, Ashley Davidson Fisher. Ashley, how are you?
I am doing well. Thank you so very much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. And also, this is my very first podcast.
Wow.
So it's even more exciting.
I'm thankful that you didn't hang up the phone after I just butchered the pronunciation of your book. You pronounce it much more beautifully. Tell us the proper pronunciation of the title of your book.
La Petite Josette en Provence.
See, I told you, much more beautiful than what I tried to do. So tell us, and again, I have to just say this, the illustrations are really spectacular. They're, very different than what you find in a lot of, picture books. They just seem more like fine art. And art that you may find in a gallery or a museum. So I definitely want to talk about the illustrations, but we also want to know about the story of La Petite Josette. So please tell us about that.
The story is about a little girl and her family. She has a sister, a mom, and a dad, and they live in Provence, and they decide to take a day trip to one of the most beautiful villages that we have here, which is called Le Beau de Provence. And during their trip, they have a beautiful picnic lunch with typical French food, see a castle, go shopping, just hang out as a family. And I chose this setting actually because Le Beau de Provence is one of the most beautiful villages in France. It's classified as this. Mm-hmm. And anytime people come to Provence, our friends, we always take them there. And it was just one of those settings that I fell in love with. And I just knew that this first book was going to be about this village. It is just a gorgeous place to be. And I wanted a story where it could be very family orientated. I wanted the parents and the children to just take the day out as a real family adventure. There's no cell phones in the picture. There's no, you always see people walking around and taking photos with their cell phones, and the little girl has a real camera. And I wanted it to be just almost back in time, like as the time when I was a little kid. And the family's just enjoying their time together, visiting this village and learning about this village, and just enjoying the fact that as a family they're taking this trip together.
Yeah. One of the you bring up an interesting point. In a lot of ways, I love technology, and I think it's wonderful. But I'm really kind of glad that my kids are older now, and that technology wasn't as pervasive as it is right now. I see families, they're out to dinner, and there's, mom, dad, and kids, and everybody's looking at their own cell phone.
Yeah.
And no
yeah.
one, I know my son was, when he was at home, we had a hard time getting him off the laptop and off the video games. I can't imagine if that was, if he had a phone in his pocket that he could pull out and just kind of disappear into.
Yeah, and I really wanted it to be not at all like that. There is actually an illustration in the book where the family is sitting down and they're having a drink at a restaurant, lemonade, and they're actually discussing, they're facing each other, the children are talking, the parents are talking, there's no cell phones on the table or anything like that. So it was very important to me to convey this message in reading the book, that it was very much a family vacation, and they're there to spend time together and learn together.
Well, I can imagine some kids might be looking at the pictures and saying, what are they doing?
Yeah. There's no phones. Yeah.
Crazy.
But in every one of the pictures in the story, you see that there's some kind of conversation going on between the people, or they're excited to see what they're seeing. One of the little girls Josette's pointing to things as she's running off with her sister down the cobblestone streets. And that's the other thing. I really wanted a nice sibling relationship. There's no fighting in the book or anything like that. I wanted to really convey that the sisters are very close to each other, and also that even as young children, they're excited to take this trip with their parents and learn about something in history, and how that, it's okay as a child to want to do that, because sometimes you'll see little children, I don't want to go, I don't want to see this is boring, this isn't going to be fun. And I really wanted to show, yes, this, learning about history and seeing these things even as a child can be so much fun. There's always something to learn, and even going with your family can be even more fun because you get to learn and see together.
Yeah. Now, one of the other things that's really fun about La Petite Josette is that it's bilingual. It's in English and in French. Why did you choose to create it from the beginning in English and French?
Well, learning French is a difficult language to learn. And when I was learning the language, I found that the teachers always wanted to teach it just by textbook, where, you really were feeling you're trying to struggle and learn this language and vocabulary and conjugation and all that. And also, I was older when I learned the language, and I thought how nice it would be for little kids who either one, they want to learn the language, or they like to just study about geography and places, or their parents would like them to learn, but give them something to where they could actually have an adventure while they were learning just phrases and not really thinking about the fact that they're actually learning French at the same time. And I tried to phrase the words so that either French would follow directly after what the little girls were saying in English, or the parents, or the other way around. And that way they could kind of get a gist of it without actually going, I'm learning this language. And it wasn't just a word here or there. It was just little phrases, because it's so much easier to learn a language if you can learn just a little phrase here and there. And I thought, wow, how neat for little kids. This would be really great, because this is the way I would want to learn French or any other language out there, was to be more adventurous and not just feel like I was having to memorize something.
Yeah. And learning phrases seems to be the way that we learn language. Because I know in my little ability to speak in Spanish, a lot of times I'll try to take a phrase in English and translate it into Spanish, and the words are correct, but it just sounds really dumb in Spanish. Like, oh, if you want to express that, we'd say it this way.
Yeah, and they are it is different. Even just a few words can be totally different. And a lot of times you'll want to think about what you're saying in English and try to do a literal translation into French or vice versa, and it doesn't really work that way. So this was a way to have things both side by side, so children and parents and grandparents, teachers can see this is what we're saying in English and this is what it's like in French, and can kind of compare the two and look at the two. So I was hoping that it would be useful in that way.
Yeah.
But
well, one of the things you and I were talking about before we started the interview is just how valuable it can be, and how really respectful it is if we are traveling to a different country, to learn a few important phrases, to at least be able to say hello and thank you and please. It really shows a respect of the culture, and I certainly find that people are much more willing to admit that they speak English and help out, or at least work with me to help us understand, and not just cop an attitude of, well, you don't speak my language, go away.
Yeah, exactly. And I've really found that in my travels. I do a little bit of investigating before I go to whichever country I'm going to go off to, and I try to learn a few phrases, and I've always, pretty much every time, felt that the reception was really good because of that. I've gotten a lot of smiles. People, oh, that's okay. And I'll say, I know I didn't pronounce this right. Can you maybe pronounce it for me? And they're always more than willing to help out and do pronunciations. And, it just kind of eases the tension a little bit. And then people just tend to warm up because they're happy that you're making an effort.
Yeah. And I know one of the things, I know when I was younger, and trying to learn a language, I was always afraid that I'd make a mistake. And that's something that happens. In fact, when I was, just before I got married, my wife's family came up from Puerto Rico, and her favorite aunt visited us and came to Boston for the wedding and everything. And I wanted to make her feel at home. And my goal was to say, how was your trip? Which in Spanish is, ¿Cómo está la viaje? And instead I said, ¿Cómo está la vieja? Which is, how's the old lady?
And how did she take that?
She was surprised, and she looked at me, and my wife, at that time my fiance, was like, what did you want to say? And I said, how was your trip? And which just everybody immediately just smiled and told me the right way to say it, and understood. And it was actually just a wonderful, wonderful way to start the whole relationship together. Certainly gave us something to talk about.
I think that's probably one of the funniest things about learning another language is, in the beginning, you're gonna get it wrong. People are gonna mispronounce things. They're not gonna get it. They're gonna forget. And it's just all a part of the learning process. And you hope that the person on the receptive end understands that. And generally they do. But, I think that's also one of the reasons why people are so afraid in the beginning to speak and practice the language, because you have this fear as an adult anyway, that you don't want to make a mistake. You would rather just, oh, I don't want to do this. I'm just going to ask in English, because I don't want to feel dumb and I don't want to make a mistake. And then gradually, as you learn the language and you keep trying, you find out that you're like, oh, I don't even care if I make a mistake. I'm just going to try, and I'm going to put myself out there and just do what I can to get my point across. And I generally feel that it's something that most people actually really like, and they'll help you. They will help you pronounce it or, and teach you the right way to say it. And it actually works a lot better. I don't think that people should be afraid to make a mistake. That's just part of life. And and it can be all in good fun as well.
Absolutely.
Obviously, as you've said in your story.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, no, and it is. And it's, I think it's an important lesson for us to teach our kids is that, we are going to make mistakes. And taking a chance and having the courage to risk failure, to risk making a mistake, it really opens up a lot of doors for us. And a lot more opportunities happen when we take those risks and when we encourage our kids to take those risks as opposed to just kind of sitting back and being afraid and not taking those chances.
Absolutely. I agree. Absolutely.
Well, you are someone who takes risk. You're here on this big, scary podcast for the very first time. But you also, people listening would say, wow, she doesn't have a French accent. You went and decided to live in France, in a country different than where you grew up.
Yes, and this is actually my second time being an expat in the country. The first time around was even more of an adventure, I would say, because I was here between the years of 2003 and 2005 with my university in a study abroad program, and that was absolutely incredible, and that was the one of the very important things that I did in my life. It changed my life forever. And at the time I had 4 really small children, married, and I went in front of a jury of 5 people at the university through this process to, be into this student exchange program. And I thought, there's no way they're going to pick me. They're going to look at me and go, how the heck is this girl and her husband and kids, going to go to France and her study? And I just really wanted to do it. But then I thought, they're never going to pick me. And my husband's like, you're crazy. Well, you're crazy. We can't just all leave. And I said, they're never going to pick me. I won't have to even make the decision. And then they did. And then I had to make the decision. So it was a struggle. I mean, we really struggled over what we were going to do. And in the end, we put everything into storage. We packed up our 4 little children and we moved to France. And it was supposed to be for 1 year, 2 semesters. And after the first semester, I had heard that you can actually do a second year as long as no first year students were taking up all the spots. So if there was any spots left, you could ask for a second year. And it turned out that there was some spots left. And I said to my husband, I don't want to go home. I don't want to leave. I love it here. And he's like, we got to go home. We've been here for a year. And I said, I don't want to. The kids are in school. They're learning French. We're seeing stuff. I don't want to go. And so we stayed 2 years and we never even went home those 2 years. We stayed in France the entire time, and we just put the kids into school and they had classes and I was doing my university studies. And, it was the best time I had in my entire life. It just was the most amazing experience. And I knew at the end of 2 years that I had to go back because I still had a few classes to do. And I could only do those classes on my home campus. And I cried every day for a month. I remember calling my mom crying, I don't want to go home, Mom. I want to see you, but I love being here. This is the most amazing thing ever. And eventually did, I had to get on the plane. We went back home and finished out my university degree and then went to work And then eventually, after a couple of jobs, I landed a job in San Diego, and this company had a office in France. And I said, I'm going to France. I know I'm going to do it. I'm going to ask eventually, after I put in my time here, that I want a position in France. And that was my goal. And I did. And the company offered me a position in France after I had worked for them for a couple years. And I looked at my husband and I said, we're going to France because we're going to go back there. Luckily, he is with me on this page because that would have been quite difficult to not have a spouse that wanted to do the same thing. But, and then that was 8.5 years ago. And so we've been here now for the second time for 8.5 years.
Wow. Fantastic. And I mean, my wife and I are experiencing now that we're doing more travel. We have more time to travel. That it's really kind of fun to be immersive in a culture, in a different culture, and to go and live with the people, as opposed to just what my wife and I did in Los Angeles a few weeks ago. Get on the tour bus and see everything there is to see at 35 miles an hour.
Yeah. Yep. It is fantastic. I mean, I love just being here. I love being in Europe. I love being around really old architecture and history. And we purposely, when we purchased our house here, we purposely moved to a village in the countryside where no one was American, no one spoke English. So we're just surrounded by French speakers, native French speakers in this little town. And I leave the village and there's vineyards and hills and trees and sheep, and it's really wonderful. I love the whole experience, and we just get to see some amazing stuff. We're very, 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 very blessed. Every day I wake up and I think, I live in France and I'm so blessed to be here that my family got this opportunity. This time around was a bit different than the last time. Obviously was a student the first time, but my children were quite small. But now, it's just my husband, myself, and our youngest daughter. Our older children live in the U.S. They're adults and they've grown up and have their life there. So, it's a little bit different than before, but I still wouldn't change it for anything. Not in a million years. It was just one of the best things I've ever done.
Well, it's really wonderful. It's like a fairy tale come true.
Yes. And most of my friends will say that too.
Well,
it is.
That's really wonderful, and it's wonderful that you've created a beautiful book to help families kind of go on a trip without leaving their home, kind of get to explore a different culture and a different country. Now, I was mentioning early on the illustrations. Your daughter did the illustrations. Am I right about that?
She did. This is my oldest daughter, who's in the States, and she has been drawing since she was about 3. And now I know she's my daughter, so I have a bit, of course she's really good, but she is absolutely amazing. She astounds me. Her talent astounds me. And she did not get it from me, because I'm lucky if I can color in the lines in a coloring book. Like she did not get it from me whatsoever, but her work is just so beautiful. And I knew when I was writing the book that she was going to be the one that I was going to have do the illustrations for it. I just knew, because I knew she could convey the sweetness that I wanted to convey through the story. And I think that she really was able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, she did. And it really is some great illustrations, a lot of emotion in the character's eyes. And like I said, it's just, the style it just feels more like a painting that you would see in a museum or a gallery. They're really amazing. I'm excited that we had this chance to talk. where can folks find out more about your books and about you online?
I have a website for the book, which is lapetitejosette.com. And I also am on Facebook. My name, Ashley Davidson Fisher. You can find me on LinkedIn under Ashley Davidson Fisher. And I am also on Twitter and Instagram, and my handle there is Backyard Provence. Now for Twitter, there's no E on the end of Provence. Not enough characters in Twitter. I'm going to have to talk to them about that. But I am out there if you on pretty much every social media. I try to be.
Excellent. And do you have a next project that you're working on?
Yes, I am working on the second book. It's outlined, and there's going to be a few new characters come into this book, and it will be a new setting, a different village. This time the village is going to be one that's a little bit more well-known, but it's a surprise.
Awesome. Well, we want to encourage everybody to check out La Petite Josette en Provence.
Very good.
Was
Great.
That's
closer? Good. You're good.
We've had such a fun time speaking to the author, Ashley Davidson Fisher. Ashley, thank you for taking us on this journey today.
I appreciate you having me very much. Thank you.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Kimberly Hemmings. Kimberly will be here. We hope you'll be here too. Hey, we are looking for a few great schools to host our all-new in-school assembly experience called Reading with Your Kids Live. That's right, we're looking to celebrate our shared love of reading and learning with some fantastic storytelling, amazing magic, and lots of totally interactive fun. We're even going to be looking for a few great young people to feature on future episodes of the podcast. You can check it out at our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Hey, if you haven't done so already, please, if you have a moment, please consider leaving a review about the show on iTunes, on iHeartRadio, or wherever you find your podcasts. It really does help people discover the show, and we really appreciate it. We also appreciate it when you share the link to our website and to individual episodes on social media like Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. That's where the bulk of our audience has come from, and we're really excited about that. If you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the show. We don't want you to miss an episode. We love the iHeartRadio podcast app. We really love the folks that are over at iHeartRadio. They've been big supporters of the show. You can also find us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Podcast Addict, Himalaya, Spotify, and wherever else you find podcasts from. We want to thank our guest today, Ashley Davidson Fisher. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you so much for putting up with my terrible French pronunciation. We also want to thank my associate producer, Fatima Khan. She is amazing and does so much to help this show. And of course, we want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. We'll be looking for you in the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.